One. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's Velero community meeting / open discussion. We got the full staff here today, and we've got a bunch of amazing community members. Thank you so much for joining. I'll be sharing my screen so we can go through some of the status updates. If you have any questions, please just unmute yourself and speak. If you can't, if your mic is broken or you're at a place that doesn't work for you, please just type in the chat and we'll be more than happy to discuss those things with you. I'll also share the HackMD that we're using so you can add in discussion topics there. So we'll do that first. Then I'm going to share my screen. All right. So going through the status updates here, we're going to start with Nolan today.
Yeah, so to follow up to our little impromptu meeting on the CSI integration last week, I believe I've got all the feedback we got from our meeting last week integrated into the document. Yesterday, I included some of the diagrams for each of the plugins, and I think we're at a point where I'm ready to call the document pretty well done. It's open for some more comments, but I think we're ready to get it merged and then like break it out for planning and organize things into workable chunks. So I hope to get that merge and breakout done this week, and then really start in earnest on that in January. And also, yesterday I started digging into the upstream CSI sidecar and common controller code to look into adding tests for that. So hopefully I can get some tests committed this week and next week to help get that get those tests more populated, since some of the changes that went in for beta. For Velero itself, we're going to move over to GitHub Actions instead of Travis. I've got an issue in the backlog for that, and I plan to do some investigation on that today. There may be some changes to how we do builds, since we have a build container image, and I think GitHub Actions doesn't allow us access to a direct VM anymore like Travis does. We have to be in an image, but I have to do some research there. If anybody wants to comment on that and correct any of this plan, let me know. And then what was my last thing? And then
just a question regarding that, Nolan. So moving over to GitHub Actions, we don't need any other CI/CD pipeline, right? No Travis, no Circle CI. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct. Part of that is to kind of get on par with some of the other Tansy open source projects. Although other teams have picked Circle CI, a lot of people are just leaving Travis. Travis is kind of stagnated, and they're also recent changes have been kind of hostile towards open source projects. The Tansy organization is fine, but for GitHub organizations with mixed private and public repos, you may be in for a surprise with how they're doing billing, and you may suddenly find that you can't build anymore. So we're moving to this newer platform. We looked at it when it was in beta, but because it was in beta, we decided let's not test drive this for them. And I think I haven't looked at it, but I think Sam Fu on our Octant team has moved over to GitHub Actions. I know he was talking to their team at KubeCon, but I want to pick his brain some too on this. But yeah, the plan is move over to GitHub Actions, be done with it. We will not have Travis CI. All of our CI will be done here. And I don't know if we'll do end-to-end tests here if we get to the point where we're like building kind clusters and running Velero in it. That I think Sam has done some investigation there, but when that point comes, we'll ask.
Okay, awesome.
And then my last thing was just kind of to remind folks that weren't on the call last week. I saw OpenEBS had adopted this, but you can add the Velero plugin GitHub topic to your repo, and you'll appear on that GitHub topic. This is a dynamic list that you'll get added to. So this is just an easy way for people to find things. Yep, that. And we may add more. I don't know if we'll add more topics in the future, but for us to track all the plugins in one place.
I think this is really cool because it makes it easy to just link to a list of Velero plugins as well. So this is
right.
Really
yeah.
cool.
And this doesn't. And this like we have like a supported list of plugins in our documentation with like jumping off points to other people's documentation, but that makes us kind of a blocker. So this we can rely on GitHub's infrastructure, and it's a little bit more rich. And this is something we stole from the Octant team. They use that for discovery of Octant plugins. So, yep, this is a way to get on a list without having to necessarily wait on doing a PR to our documentation. You can still do that, but this is another option.
Awesome. Let's see here. So a question from Adnan here. What happens if people put that tag on unrelated repos?
Nolan gets mad.
Yeah. I think we'll be mad and sad, and I think it's very much like like Carlisia said, they'll show up too. I think this is equivalent to like a hashtag on social media. It stands to reason that it could be misused.
Yeah, so there's nothing we can do to remove it.
Right.
So, but
yeah. I think we might be able to go to GitHub and say, hey, somebody's using this maliciously. If it's like, I don't know if we can say, hey, like we don't like that. That thing that Jonas is hovering over, that curate this topic. We, the Velero developers, can't use the curate this topic because that adds like metadata and like more info to it, but community members are welcome to do that, like descriptions and images and links. But I think that's separate from somebody, I don't know, adding Velero plugin to something completely unrelated to Velero and Kubernetes. I don't know that because it's completely distributed, it's not something we can control.
Okay.
Or like an alternative project or something.
Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, for the exact reason that you don't have to wait on us, it could be used for that.
We'll handle that if that comes.
Yeah.
Ashish, do you have any comments there?
Yes, on the move to GitHub workflows, Nolan, do we have like the same feature parity with Travis or with Travis? Like, for example, like our repo currently we display things like the build status and stuff, right? So do we get the same benefits from moving to GitHub workflows?
When I was playing with it in the beta, yeah, we did. They had build status and things like that. I need to review the documentation some more. And like I said, I think it's one of Octant, Sonobui, or Contour uses it already. So I was gonna take a look at their setup before I dug too deep into just reading their the GitHub Action documentation. So once I'm armed with that information, I was gonna toss it in the issue.
Okay, go ahead. No, I was just saying I took a quick peek at the Octant framework or the Octant repo. Looks like it is giving us the info we wanted, like at least from the banners that we display, the release, the build status, and like the licensing and stuff. So we should be good there. So
Yeah, I from what I saw when I was playing with it, like on my private repos during the beta, it fed quite a bit of rich data in. During the beta, they were actually like changing the configuration around pretty late in the process, so that was part of why I wasn't like, hey, let's move to it during the beta. But I think in terms of actually reporting statuses and filtering into the updates at the bottom of a PR, they're using a lot of those hooks that other CI systems already use.
okay. So
Nolan,
thank you.
One question on GitHub Actions. Do you know if they support the ARM builds as well?
I do not know.
Cool. I think Velero right now supports the ARM builds, right?
Velero,
Well,
Velero should support ARM builds because I believe Go cross compilation should allow ARM builds from wherever it's happening.
Yeah, I think we published the CLI for ARM, but we don't. We're not doing Docker builds for ARM right now.
I believe that's correct. Sorry, I was getting mixed up with PowerPC. Yeah, I believe that's right. So I'll write that down to double check that our architecture builds should not change.
And I guess following up to that, I mean, we have a PR in to add PowerPC Docker builds, and folks have asked for ARM Docker builds as well. So it would be nice if we're able to do that on GitHub Actions. I would imagine that we can, but it'd be a good thing to confirm.
All right. Any other questions for Nolan here? Moving on. Carlesia.
Okay, so the Helm chart for Velero has been updated with instructions for Velero 1.2, and mainly the values file, values.yaml file has the examples, commented out examples of how to fill out that file, especially how to add plugins just by adding the path to the container images right there in that file. That's it for that. And so my next bullet is another Helm related thing. So for version 3.0 of Helm, they want the charts to be moved to a different repository. So this is something we need to think about. Do we add a folder? Do we add a folder to Velero? Do we open a new repository on Tansy organization? Because in any way, one reason they want to do that is it's written in that description. It's really high churn, that repository. So I had the experience by submitting that PR very quickly. It would be out of sync with the master. So that would be good for us to not have to run into that.
So I had a chat with Tim about this. I think we were thinking about setting up a VMware Tansy charts repository, which would include things like Velero, Contour, and other charts that we have in the VMware Tansy.
Oh, that's a good idea, I think.
Yep, it makes sense to me. Just out of curiosity, is it an option to include like a charts subdirectory in the Velero repo? Is
Yeah,
that something Helm 3 supports?
that's one way of doing it. I mean,
Okay.
so the repositories are separate from where it is in GitHub. So as long as there's some CI script that takes that, packages it, and then pushes it up to a repository.
Oh, I see. So you have to have a separate repository anyway?
Yeah, so we have to set
Okay.
up a bucket somewhere, or we can serve it from GitHub pages or something like that, but we'd have to figure that out.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week as well. So that's how we do it for Harbor. We have a separate repository that's just being served through Netlify, just like any other website that we have there. So super simple.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Maybe would it make sense to move the Harbor one into a VMware Tanzu charts repo?
Well, Harbor is a CNCF owned project. So
Oh, right. Yeah.
handling that separately.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, we can definitely have the Helm charts be under one repository under Tanzu, the VMware Tanzu org, and then we could actually have Netlify build out pages for each project because they would have subdirectories, right? So we could have helm.velero.io could then host the Helm charts for Velero, for instance, and then we would have Helm Sonoboy.io, etc. So
I will say it will be slightly easier to have things in one repository, because then when we go and add it to the Helm hub, we just have to add one repository apart from rather than multiple repositories. But I mean, I don't think that's a huge problem, but it probably is a little bit nicer to have one repository.
Sure, whatever works. Super easy to set up. The Netlify piece, that is. I'm not talking about Helm.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't know anyone was doing that for Netlify for Helm charts, so I'm curious to check that out.
Yeah, I can show you later if you want.
Yeah, please do.
Sure.
So reading this issue, it sounds like May 13th, 2020 is the main deadline we need to keep in mind, because at that point, after that, only security fixes will be accepted. So we got a few months, but we definitely have to get it done in the first part of next year.
Yeah, I think the plan was 6 months after Helm 3 release, deprecate repo now, 6 months later, no longer accept any new charts or security fixes, and then 6 months after that, completely remove that repository.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, so they're completely killing off the Helm charts repo. So basically their plan is to kill Helm 2. Oh, archived.
Yeah, sorry, I misspoke. It will still be around. It just won't be as discoverable.
Okay, so Helm 2 will work, but you will be strongly encouraged to move up to Helm 3.
And it will point to the charts that were in the stable and incubator repo, but you won't get the latest versions of those charts. It'll be whatever was there back when that repository was archived, basically.
And also, if we want to have compatibility with Helm 3, it will have to be in a new repo or a new place, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not necessarily. Helm 3 can point to the charts in the Helm 2 repo, as far as I know.
Right, but the anything in github.com/helm/charts will be bit rotted.
Eventually, yes. But I would say for now, it's fine until May 13th. After that, we definitely want to move it out for sure, and probably even before. But as far as it working with Helm 3 now, I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
But I might be wrong there.
Any question on this Helm stuff?
Because there was also that CRD change, which moved the CRDs into the CRDs folder, which is a Helm 3 thing. And I think after that makes it work with Helm 3.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like there's going to be a ton of incompatibilities. So this all sets it up for a clean break between Helm 2 and Helm 3.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions regarding Helm? All right. Release CLI UX improvement. What's this about?
Yes, we have a bunch of small and not so small issues that pertain to the flow of Velero installation. And I'm putting together a proposal that I'm not necessarily coming up with new ideas, but just gathering ideas that I think are the best ideas based on my bias, of course. I hope I have something to document to share tomorrow. But off the bat, just to share what I've been thinking, there has been a talk about there are a bunch of separate things that I'm putting together in this document. So one thing is about having a Velero status, like a Velero service status, and that's something that sorry, excuse me, that I'm going to propose we add. And what I would like to have too is, well, I would like to propose first to have the ability to install Velero without the backup storage locations. We've talked about this before. And I think that could be reasonable because we could reasonably think that there would be different workflows. For example, a person who will install Velero might have certain permissions that the person who's going to create a backup doesn't have. And then the question is, well, so which one of these two, let's say, operators would have the permission to create a backup storage location? Maybe it'll be the same person that will create the backup. So if we do that, we could make it so Velero has a ready and not ready status, which would necessitate us having that status feature for the server. So if the Velero is in a non-ready, if Velero doesn't have any backup storage location, it will be in a non-ready status. And then like there is a comment in one of the tickets that Steve suggested. So it's not my idea, but I like the idea of making it so the validation for backups are done during backup creation instead of on the server during the Velero startup. And which is concerning to me in terms of performance, but then we also eventually are going to make backups concurrent. In that case, I wouldn't be so concerned. So that's where my head is at so far. And then there is a whole separate thing with Velero plugin and providers. I have a very strong opinion on how we could change that to make it more understandable, and but I have to write that out for it all to make sense to other people. If anybody has strong opinions about any of this stuff, I'd love to hear that, and I can share the documents, but it's just not. It'll cause more questions because it's not anywhere near complete.
But I have a question. So if we split up, and I think we discussed this at a previous community call, but if we split up install and configure, it makes it easier for people to install it and just to have it installed, and then they can configure. As you said, it might be different people with different permissions, right? That would break some of the automation that people have in place now, right now, though, right? So if they automate through Ansible or things like that, the Velero install process, we would have to make sure that they understand that we're introducing that breaking change.
Yeah, it could be that during install you have the option to also configure at the same time, but it would, in my mind, it doesn't have to be required. But it's definitely probably going to be an interface, a break in an interface.
Okay. Okay. So I was reading through the issue here. Did you want to spend a little more time on talking about this on this call or a later call?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Do you want to?
Not on this call.
Okay.
Not, but like the next call, I will be ready to. But are we gonna? Where are we?
Yeah, we got one next week as well.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to dive into it next week, I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, does anyone on the call have any questions, comments here for Carlicia? All right. Yeah, we'll dive into this next week then. I think this is great. Yeah, fantastic stuff.
Okay.
Thank you, Carlicia.
Sure.
All right, Steve, you're up.
All right, yeah, just a couple of updates. So we finalized planning for the 1.3 release last week. So I've got a link here just to the milestone in GitHub. So there are a couple of different ways that you can view this, but this is kind of the GitHub native way. So just looking at the 1.3 milestone, looks like we've got about 19 issues in there right now. The headline issues are or the headline features for this release are going to be the two items that Nolan and Carlicia already talked about. So first of all, CSI snapshot integration. So continuing to advance that. And then second of all, working on that install and config UX. So those will be the top priority items. And then beyond that, we have a collection of some smaller features, a little bit of design work on those, and a collection of bugs as well. So we're certainly still open to contributions from other folks as well. So if there are other items in the backlog that we haven't moved into 1.3, but that you're interested in working on, certainly don't consider the scope to be a blocker for that. And so we're, as far as timeline for the 1.3 release, I think given that we're sort of straddling the end of the year, this release will probably have a slightly longer cycle than some of our other ones. We've kind of got a tentative end date of March 31st, but somewhere around the first quarter of next year is when to expect this to land.
So around that date, that's KubeCon in Amsterdam as well. So around KubeCon, essentially.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, Jonas is giving us a deadline.
I would never. I just want to make sure that that you don't do too much if you have to prep for the conference as well.
Is KubeCon in March or is it April? I don't have the dates in my head.
End of March.
End of March. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like March into April, I think. That week.
I think it starts on March 31st or something like that.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, this still gives us a full 3 months once we come back from the end of year holidays. So pretty comfortable with it, but obviously, we'll keep an eye on it.
Sounds good.
So yeah, that covers the planning. And then yesterday we have a bug that's in the 1.3 scope around a potential memory leak. This was reported by some of our colleagues from EMC. So I started digging into this, haven't totally tracked it down. It appears to be related to some of the code that we have for running hooks, so pre and post hooks. As far as I can tell, it's not being caused by Velero code, but potentially by some of the libraries we're using for executing those hooks. So I need to do some more digging here, but continuing to make progress on this. And then, if I get through this or if I need a break, I'll probably pick up some of the other bugs or smaller features that we have in the backlog. I think those are all the updates I have.
Cool. Yeah, this doesn't look good at all. So yeah, hopefully that can be fixed. All right. Ashish.
I have a question. Sorry, I have
Yeah.
a question. Is that memory leak on a how long was the pod running, or how 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 quickly does the memory rise? Because if looking at the graph, yes, there is an increase, but after the increase, it's kind of sticks around the 238 megabytes.
I think that's because of the limit, right? There's a limit on the pod.
But if there's a limit, you should see like a drop and then an increase, right?
Yeah, you see it hitting the limit constantly, essentially, up here.
Oh, but I expected if it hit a limit, it would be killed. So
Yeah.
consumption would drop to 0, and then you would see like a sawtooth sort of a thing if the increase is drastic. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, so you're right. I think it's not restarting. I think it's just kind of not using any more memory, which means, although it does say it is failing due to out of memory issues eventually.
That kind of stuck out for me, but I don't know. Not sure what might be going on.
Yeah, I mean, I still need to do some more digging. Can't totally piece everything together yet.
Sounds good. So Ashish.
So for me, yeah, am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. So
Nope.
for me, I was revisiting some of our documentations that we have and how we've organized them. Steve had had a PR with a suggestion of how we outline our docs. So kind of taking a look at that and making comments and getting that discussion going. So that's pretty much what I've been up to. Apart from that, I've kind of trying to get a grip of everything else that's going on. So that's pretty much.
Sounds good. Yeah, reorganizing docs and making them more better is always good.
Yeah, I have another discussion topic, soliciting feedback. I don't know if that's the place where I want to solicit or in my update, but that's there for folks to take a look.
Perfect. Yeah, we can cover that in a bit.
Yeah.
Cool. Any questions for Ashish? All right. Adnan.
Yeah, so I've been taking a look at some of these issues that we've been seeing around the structural schema support in TRDs, specifically in 113 clusters. And it seems like the issue is related to kubectl's client-side validation that it does. So this user is kind of generating using Velero install a manifest and then passing it to kubectl apply, and then they get a bunch of errors based on that validation that happens. And so if you apply it with validate false, which is kind of similar to what Velero install is doing, it installs fine and things actually work and the schema works fine. It's simply if you have this validation happening with kubectl, that's when the issue happens, and specifically for pre-114 clusters. So I don't think, I had a look if it makes sense for Velero to do that client-side validation, and I don't think it does. I'm not sure how kubectl is doing that specifically, and the server will do its own validation anyway, so any actual incorrect errors will actually be reported back with Velero install. So it seems like it might just be a question of, should we document if you're trying to do this on a 113 cluster and you're trying to pipe it to kubectl apply, you need to set validate to false.
So are the validation errors that kubectl is reporting, are they like false positives? Like they're not actually errors?
Seems like it, because if you set validate to false, or if you install it with Velero install, it works and the schema works fine. I haven't actually tested the nullable fields, but I haven't seen any issues with like basic usage of Velero.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, and they're just false positive validation errors that are being reported, then I could see just documenting using the validate equals false flag being reasonable.
Yeah, looks like the user just got back to us, so I haven't read his response yet, but
Okay.
But yeah, that issue's cropped up a couple of times, so just trying to get to the bottom of it and trying to figure out what's actually going on there.
Sounds good. Any questions for Adnan? All right, let's move into the discussion topics. First up, we got trigger Velero backups based on Kubernetes events. Sorry, I was muting myself. You want to speak about this?
I put this in, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Niall? This was from a Slack discussion, and I threw this in, but if you could speak up, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. So thank you, Jonas and Nolan, for putting this in the Velero community meeting. Me as a user, I would prefer to having Velero backups based on the Kubernetes event. I mean, whenever I have an object in my Kubernetes cluster that is being deleted or terminated, I would like Velero to trigger backups rather than doing it manually or scheduling these backups. Also, I'm thinking if this would be a good addition for Velero, or should be implemented in separately in plugin, or I don't know.
Hey, Niall. So would this be something like a pre-event hook or something like that, where you want to back up before you actually delete and remove it?
I don't think that it would pre-events. I mean, I could having some post start or pre-stop hooks in my objects or in my pods. Whenever it's being finished, it trigger a Velero backup. But I would like to have it from a cluster point of view. I mean, any object I had, based on its states, I can trigger a Velero backup. I don't think I don't know if you got my ideas or not.
So one of the reasons I asked to create this issue was I've actually heard this request before, and I'm gonna mute you because I'm getting feedback. So we've heard this request before, and I think it's a good one. I don't know that we'll implement it immediately, but I think it's also one that could theoretically live outside of Velero. At least it could live outside of Velero and then maybe move into Velero. I envision this as something like a Velero schedule, which the implementation of a Velero schedule is it has the backup spec embedded in it plus the cron job. So I envision the data structure being these are the events I watch for, create, delete, whatever actions. And then these are the data types I'm interested in, right? So maybe you want to look for everything. Maybe you want to look for specific resources. So you want to look for Istio resources. with this specific thing. So I don't think it's a bad idea, but I think in terms of getting it into core Velero, it's probably something we'll have to discuss more. But I think for the time being, it could probably, if it's something you need now, it's probably not a good idea to wait on us, is what I would say. And I don't know if other people have thoughts on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it sounds like a cool feature. It definitely sounds like a controller that you could write that doesn't really need to be running inside the Velero pod itself. You know, potentially down the road, if it's something we want to package up with Velero, we could include it there. But it also could just be running as its own thing and essentially watching for these events and then creating a Velero backup custom resource when appropriate.
Be really cool to see that, though. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
If there are more people interested in that, definitely should add a comment to that ticket.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Niall.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Next up, the data protection working group. Who wants to talk about that one?
Yeah, I tossed that in there, and I see we have Jing on, and this is mostly just kind of heads up to let everybody know that this is something that came up from discussions at KubeCon, that data protection is kind of this massive beast. SIG Storage has been working on the volume snapshots. Velero has been doing snapshots since launch in 2017, but data protection goes beyond snapshots, especially in on-prem environments. And SIG apps, there's like a KEP out there for doing an application protection thing, which is it uses a CRD called, I think it's just called application, that like defines this is a root of my application, and that defines all the resources that would make that up. And this working group is kind of meant to pull all that stuff together and explore what does data protection mean for Kubernetes? How do we start tying these things together? And so I intend to be participating in that for a Velero team. And I just wanted people to know that that's coming together. And I want to thank Xing, Dave Smith-Uchida, and for putting that together, and Adnan on SIG Apps for helping get that going. And Xing, if you want to say anything more about that, feel free. Or Adnan, if you have anything to add.
You have covered it very well. So now we just wait for the steering committee to approve that. I think it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
So we probably want to schedule some informal meetings even before that, because I don't know how long it takes for this thing to get formally approved. So I will talk to Dave and maybe send out an email and invite people to attend the meeting, because otherwise probably will be after the holidays.
Yeah, I would not, I'm not super involved in the upstream SIGs and working group stuff, but yeah, I would guess after the US holidays is a safe bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the current meeting time is every other Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, basically the same slot as the volume snapshot one, right?
So I think we may need to discuss about that, because on Monday we had a volume snapshot meeting, and then someone was saying they want to keep that meeting because there are still some things to be sorted out.
Okay.
So I will talk to Jean and Sad and see how we are going to do that. So maybe one option I'm thinking is we can still do it on Mondays, but maybe we will do this data protection meeting using the usual volume snapshot meeting time, and then have the volume snapshot meeting time move to the following week, because you have the SIG apps meeting on the following week, right? So
I guess there's no one in the volume snapshot group right now that's from SIG apps.
Yeah.
But
so I was thinking, because the data protection one, is a cross sig between SIG apps and the 6:30, so we don't want that to
Yeah.
overlap with the SIG apps meeting.
Yeah, we definitely don't want that one to overlap. Yeah, I think that could make, if there are kind of last minute things that are hanging on. So I thought that was going to get freezed, but it sounds like
that was at last. We discussed that at last 6:30 meeting. This was just was it yesterday during the volume snapshot. I mean, when there's one guy who was saying, he still has some questions on how to do this upgrade from alpha to beta. He still wants this meeting slot so that don't get lost, because this data protection working group will have a very large scope. So we probably won't have time to cover those details. So I think that makes sense. So we will sort out that meeting time issue.
Okay. Yeah, I guess another option is to send around a doodle poll to whoever's interested, although that opens a bit of a rabbit hole. Well, I think probably the better option is just to still use that time, but then maybe move the warning snap one to the following week. I will see, because there's really only a very small number of people in yesterday's meeting. Okay, yeah. In that case, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
So are you saying you wanted to have a data protection meeting, working group meeting before the holidays?
Because so next, if we use the time slot that we discussed in the 6:30 meeting, then that'll be
the 23rd.
That'll be right before Christmas, so nobody will show up. So Davey and I were thinking maybe we should schedule a meeting next week. So we will have to pick a time.
Yeah.
Maybe Tuesdays or something. Is it Tuesday? You have a Velero meeting every Tuesday?
It's every Tuesday, yeah, this time.
Oh, okay.
Yep, but next week will be the last one for the year.
Okay.
And then we'll start up again in 2020.
Yeah,
okay.
January 7th.
Okay, so maybe we can do something like 1 hour right after this meeting or something.
That could work.
That'll be, Okay, so I will talk to Dave and see what we want to do.
Or even right after SIG apps on Monday. It's an option.
But there's a CSI implementation meeting right after that.
Okay.
All right, I'll let you figure out calendaring.
Yeah.
Let's do that offline. See if we can get that done.
Yeah.
Cool. Any questions regarding this working group and the things going on in there? All right. I want to make sure that we have time for the Q&A. So we have a question from Kieran, and then we'll see if we can talk about the docs PR as well. But I want to move over to Kieran right now. So Kieran, you got a question here regarding CI/CD on production-like environment using Velero.
Thanks, Jonas. So this is like a follow-up to one of the use cases that I brought up last week. So this is an on-premise setup, and this comes from one of the OpenEBS users, and I'm looking for some recommendations or inputs on how to use Velero in this case. I've added a few more details into that document. We could either take it up right now or do it offline, just in the interest of the time.
I think if you want to, I think if you want to talk about what you're seeing here, that'd be good.
Yeah. So the user has this environment that's running on premise, and it basically has this different namespaces created. And let's say there's a production namespace with multiple applications that are running in that one, and he wants to trigger a CI/CD pipeline by effectively cloning all those applications along with the data into a different namespace, And once the CI/CD is completed, in case everything is fine, just go ahead and delete it or leave that for a little longer in case some issues need to be resolved out of the CI/CD pipeline, right? So I did notice that with a cloud solution like AWS EBS, I'm actually able to get this done via Velero. But with on-premise solution, the backup is it depends on the plugin. At least like OpenEBS, I think I need to make some changes where I need to have some way to say that this is a local snapshot, or typical use case is taking a backup, but this is a slightly different use case where you just need to take a local snapshot and then restore it. Just wondering if there are any other inputs, or the other question was about the parallel snapshots. I remember like there were some discussions earlier on this one, especially with production having like multiple applications, stateful applications. Is it possible to take parallel snapshots now? Or does it go sequentially on all the volumes?
Yeah, today it goes sequentially. So one snapshot at a time. And we've talked about various kind of flavors of that issue. With snapshots, our underlying assumption is that they're relatively quick operations. And so we haven't highly prioritized adding parallelization there for the snapshots themselves. But if it's not true that those snapshots are quick, then I could definitely see running into issues there.
Cool. Steve, is there any thing that you could point me to the past discussions, or like some draft proposals that might have been there so I can take a look at them?
Yeah, I'll have to dig up some issues, but I can do that and just tag you on them in GitHub if that works for you.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
And a related one on that is the next thing. I'm looking for some. So if I look at the Velero repository, I remember like in the past KubeCons, I spoke to someone about this regarding a community repository that we can create to have solutions on taking application consistent snapshots by trying to set up some hooks, like for example, like say Postgres, right? Is there any repo that's already created for these sample things that we can put up, or like some documentation that we can add around creating application consistent snapshots for specific applications with examples into some hooks, etc.?
I think we talked about adding more documentation around specific use cases, and I think that could go in there, where you have an application specific use case, right? So yeah, we don't have a separate repo for that. The plan was to add that to essentially like an FAQ or similar documentation piece, talking about specific use cases. Would that work?
Yeah. So that is perfect. So I'll probably look at any of, if there are any existing applications to do that. I want to just follow that model for Postgres, try to come back with what I find on that.
Okay,
right.
cool. Yeah, I think that ties into the docs reorg that we're going to do as well. I want to be cognizant of time here. Ashish, do you want to quickly speak about the docs reorg?
Sure. So what I wanted to say about that was that we are doing this. So if anybody on the call has suggestions or feedback, we would like to hear from you, and we would like to incorporate your feedback into our work. So please feel free to comment on the PR that we have open, and engage with us on Slack if you have questions or other suggestions that you don't want to put there on as comments.
Awesome.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you, Ashish. Steve, do you want to close us out with some contributor shoutouts?
Yeah, absolutely. Had a few contributions over the last week or two, so in no particular order. The first one we have here is from Dinesh. So this contributor added support for the AWS profile environment variable when using Restic. So we've had support for using different AWS credentials profiles in Velero, but it wasn't actually properly flowing through to Restic. So that if you had multiple backup storage locations, each one using a different AWS profile, and you were using Restic for backups, essentially it wouldn't all hook together. So Dinesh added support for this. So thanks a lot for the contribution. Definitely a nice feature to add there. We had a docs PR come in from Shashank855 who updated our Restic docs specifically for when running on OpenShift 4.1 or later. Just clarifying some of the setup instructions there. So really appreciate that update. And then the third one we have here is from Cognoz, who sort of fixed a bug or added a feature, depending on how you look at it, to support essentially pulling the Restic restore helper container image from a private registry that uses a custom port. So we had some kind of buggy logic in some of our validation code that wouldn't allow custom ports to be specified on the container registry. So this has now been fixed, and we've got a nice set of unit tests to make sure that that code actually works as expected. So thanks a lot, Cognos. I appreciate that contribution. Awesome. Yeah, thank you to all contributors. Thank you, Steve, for the shout outs here. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. If you have any other questions or comments, you know where we are in Slack, so just hit us up there. I'll make sure that this gets posted post-haste up to YouTube as well, so you can view it there if there's anything that you missed throughout the call. And with that, thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your week. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.